Connie Willis here on Coast to Coast AM. Hope you're enjoying the evening. Open lines coming up for you later where you can talk with Dr. Jeffrey Long. We're going to ask him to stick around for an hour. We'll see if he'll do that. And then, of course, the last hour, anything goes. It's Friday night, and I'll be back again tomorrow night, too, with a couple of great guests, Dave the Mystic and Regan Forstone, too. Dave the Mystic is talking about ETs in plain sight. Yeah, and where you can see them yourselves. And Regan is going to be talking about how you can be regressed to visit heaven and come back. And he'll talk about how what his experience was and other people's experiences. He said that there's 250 people in the world that can do this, and they're actually looking for more to be able to, keep this going. So I think you'll have a fun night tomorrow night, but hey, more to come here right now. So Jeffrey Long, Dr. Jeffrey Long, make sure I put that doctor in. He did a lot of work to get that DR period in front of it, or the MD on the other side. Near-Death Experience Research Foundation. You can go to that website. He founded that one. You can look under NDER, Near-Death Experience Research Foundation. So NDERF.org. Also, After Death Communication Research Foundation. So After Death Communication, ADC, and then the Research Foundation, RF. So ADCRF.org. And also Out of Body Experience Research Foundation, OBERF.org. He's taken over the world when it comes to this. He does everything large on a big scale. It's, again, go big or go home. So, Jeff, we were talking about love at the very last segment. I'd love for you to explain any more about love that you can, because it sounds like that's the most important thing you've found out of all of this.
Oh, Connie, you are so right about that. The two most common words used by people describing their near-death experience is love and light. So we hear a lot about that in near-death experiences, and they are absolutely dramatic and exciting. We did have a survey question. The most recent version of the survey interviewed 834 people that had a near-death experience. Survey question: during your experience, that being a near-death experience, did you encounter any specific information or awareness regarding love? And good gosh, Connie, 57.1% said yes. So it's very common for people during their experience to have some special insights or knowledge. And what they have to say about love, again, I just love reading about this, to use a term, straight from near-death experiencers. I knew that love was the greatest force around us, and that we are all love, and love is the only thing that is real. And another near-death experiencer shared, love was everywhere. It permeated the afterlife. It was incredible. Connie, we have hundreds of these types of quotes, of descriptions of love from near-death experiencers, absolutely off the charts in terms of beauty and amazing concepts about love. If only we could accomplish that in our earthly lives. But certainly in the afterlife, a major sort of glue, if you will, of the whole afterlife seems to be this unearthly, fantastic love.
I love to be able to educate people on that, because, to hear you say those things, and to hear when I've talked to people that have crossed over and come back. I did it, but I was like 4.5 years old, so I don't remember all that stuff. I just remember what I saw at our car accident scene that I was involved in. I remember seeing everything that I should not have ever seen. I should have been on my way. And my dad was like, "No, you were on the way to the hospital." It's like, "No, I remember seeing you there, Dad." But I love hearing when people discuss the love part, and you just got to wonder, is that this like driving thing in our life while we're here? And also, the bigger part of educating people and spreading that word is because there's so many people that fear death.
Oh, absolutely. Fear of death is unfortunately one of the real issues that we collectively as humans have. That fear of the unknown or what's going to happen. And yet here by the thousands, literally, people share their near-death experience and talk about what it's like on the other life, what it's beyond death's veil. And over you hear, as we discuss, this concept of love. Again, from near-death experiencers, I was loved unconditionally. despite my faults and fears, and the entire experience was one of unfathomable love from another near-death experiencer. So very inspiring, positive information coming from near-death experiences about what lies beyond. Certainly, for the near-death experiencers themselves, Connie, they have a dramatic reduction in their fear of death after their near-death experience. While death is frightening, if you have a near-death experience and know full well from your personal experience what lies beyond the veil, the great majority of near-death experiencers no longer fear death. They may fear, of course, the dying process, but they know full well what lies beyond, and that it's a wonderful afterlife that awaits us all.
Though, okay, so you're on the front lines of all this, okay? You are right there in the room with them. You are there. Okay, so let me ask you this. You get on the other side, there's love, it's wonderful, oh, that's great. Me, that's awesome, I get it, I've loved that. What I don't like is, especially after taking care of parents and seeing other people at the end of their life, the hard part for me is that part before you die.
Yeah.
That is, whether it's dementia, Parkinson's, whatever disease you may have or whatever takes you out, even if it's an accident of some sort, the pain of it, the long time in the hospital, the people that gradually fall apart, the fact that, and you've probably seen this, I know you've seen this when you're in ICU and you see a whole different personality of a person, and it's not the person and they're trying to escape, they have to be tied down, that kind of thing. It makes me go back to the movie Charlton Heston's Soylent Green, where people can decide when they're going to go. They take the pill and then they lay there in the orange room or the red room or whatever color room they want with the video of nature or whatever as they fall asleep and never wake back up.
Yeah.
That's the hard part, is the dying part.
Yeah, it really is. And Connie, as a physician who takes care of patients with cancer, I see that vividly every day of my professional practice, and it's a tragedy. Dementia, that failing of people that are advanced age, and the failing at the end of life of the ones we love, the ones we care about. And here they are, diminished mental status, often very difficult to get with. I think one thing to consider as we see that is that in the afterlife, basically there is none of that death, that dementia. We're all picture-perfect health in the afterlife. We're all the loved ones who have lost their personality, their ability to reason, that's all going to be restored in the afterlife. In fact, they're going to have a much, much greater consciousness, alertness, and mentition, greatly accelerated consciousness compared to our earthly life. So it's a tough slog to go through our earthly life. In fact, one near-death experiencer said that our earthly life was the boot camp of our spiritual eternal existence. And I like that because I think that's so true. But I think, on the other hand, that when you see the people that are suffering like that and miserable near the end of the life, isn't that, Connie, also a call for the rest of us to reach out to them lovingly, compassionately, to care for them, to do the best we can for them, to help them make that transition at the end of their earthly life to that glorious afterlife? And I think
you would think.
Yeah,
you would think not everybody does, right? But do you, since you are on the front line, do you ever think, you know what? And I don't know what the answer is. I just know I've seen this and it's really hard and it is not fun. And I just, the other day I was taking a walk and there was an older lady that I know that she still walks around. I'd seen her stop and lean up against a pole. And I walked up to her, and it was the lady I actually knew. And I was like, how are you? You okay? And she used to be an RN. And she's like, I don't know, maybe upper 80s, lower 90s. And she's still, fit and walking around. But she had to stop. And she said, I think I just had a dementia moment. And she was there by herself alone. Other people walking by her as if she didn't exist. And I, thank goodness, I knew who she was and went up to her and saw her because I could see that she was afraid for that moment. So being on the front lines as you are, and knowing it's good on the other side, do you ever think, hey, we need to stop this 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, 3 days of suffering that is just absolutely horrible?
Yeah.
Do you ever think, like, we take our animals and we put them to sleep so they don't go through that? Has that ever been a thought with you?
Yeah. Euthanasia or terminating life early is a very complex societal issue.
Yeah.
There's certainly some strong arguments both for and against that. I certainly know from my experience with cancer patients, when they're incurable, when their cancer is progressing, and we can't cure it with the best of our medical knowledge and treatment techniques, at least for these people, and it's true for other people that are near the end of their life, I'm absolutely impressed as a physician with hospice. In other words, the people who are specially trained and skilled and experienced at helping people make that end-of-life transition. It is absolutely amazing to me how people can be kept as comfortable as possible and as functional as possible, even when they're within days, even weeks of their life ending. So certainly, while the dying process can be very, very difficult, certainly as you've described, medicine and certainly the compassion of society is all kind of converging on making that easier than it ever has been in the past. So it's really fascinating to think. And I guess part of it is if you have a loved one in your life that's going through that very difficult end-of-life situation, it's hard to remember this, but it's a great truth that our earthly life is only the tiniest slice of our real eternal existence. And I know that's hard to accept or understand for people that are in a dying process, and yet it's a great reality. I mean, everything we shared today talks about that afterlife, who we really are, what we really are, is that destiny, that heritage that we have in the afterlife, where we're much, much more than we are in our limited physical earthly life.
Blink of an eye here. Enjoy it. Love, love, love. Live for yourself, not for others. And speaking of that, I want to ask you about, because you said on the other side, animals and relatives and spouses and this and that. What about those people that are here? Their spouse passes, they're widows and widowers. A lot of people ask me this question of, okay, can I remarry again? Is it okay? Because, and even the people that date the widow and widowers, they're like, well, wait a minute, I'm going to be with them a couple years or 10 years or 2 decades or however long it is. And then they're just going to see their spouse on the other side. What happens with me? I don't know if I want to be hanging around a threesome kind of thing, right? What about that, where people don't feel that they're allowed to marry again after their spouse passes? What do you know about that from the other side?
Oh, absolutely, Connie. That is a very important question. I'm glad you brought that up. There's some definitely insights from near-death experiences that address that important question. In the afterlife, it's non-physical. I mean, it's hard for people to understand that here in our physical earthly life existence, that the afterlife is so radically different, time doesn't exist. It's not really physical. People have described it as energy, but it's a completely different realm. In that realm, we're part of our eternal existence. Eternity is a heck of a long time compared to the bit of time we have here in our earthly life. And in the afterlife, again, love is predominant. You would want the best for those that have died and gone on and are in the afterlife. You'd want only your best for that spouse that you've left here in the earthly life. I mean, you know that that earthly life is difficult. They have to have grieving from the loss of that loved one. I am confident that the people in the afterlife that have lost a spouse would have no concerns at all. In fact, would welcome them having an ongoing, additional loving relationship during their earthly life, a loving relationship so that they can share with other people, share love, which is so important in the afterlife, and just get the most out of their physical earthly life during the time we have. So I'm quite confident from everything in near-death experiences that that's part of the greater reality. And I hope people that have lost a loved one and worry about remarrying, worry about getting in a relationship, the word from the other side, as best I can tell, it's not only okay, but it is absolutely okay. And that's the reassuring news from near-death experiences.
That's nice. That's nice to hear. So you've learned so much. I know that imprinting is a very important thing to do. If you're in situations, if you've already imprinted how to handle certain situations in life, if you've already imprinted the answers and resolutions, or, whatever you need to do. Like if I go down a dark alley, and somebody approaches me and they do this is what I need to do. You imprint, in your mind what to do, because you're going to be in a situation of, you can't think, you just got to do, right? So you, what do you have imprinted in your mind that if something happened to you where you crossed over, and what would you do if it was like just today? Would you say, I want to come back, I want to come back, I want to see it all, and I want to come back, or what would you do? What have you got in your mind?
And I hadn't really thought about that much. I can tell you from the over 4,000 people that have shared their near-death experiences, I have no fear of what lies beyond death's door. Right. I absolutely get that based on a mountain of evidence that the afterlife is a reality. So I would, at some significant way, welcome being back, literally back home, back in my real eternal afterlife, spiritual life. So and being with the loved ones that I've known in my earthly life that I've lost. So I think I would welcome that a great deal. We'd have that profound sense of love, connection, unity that near-death experiencers consistently describe. And yet I think I have to balance that in all my decades of life, I've gotten kind of attached to my earthly life and the people I know, loved ones. I love shows like this too, for example. And so it would be a loss. I'd have to let go of that, because when you're dead and gone and in the afterlife, you really can't, you've let go of that life. So I guess I'd have sort of mixed feelings about that. I think that in the biggest picture, though, I would welcome being back home, being back with my eternal life, and literally being back to my real eternal self. That would be, I think, probably the overriding positive about my own personal death.
So they might be saying, okay, you got more work to do. Let's just say it happened today, later tonight. They would go, you got more work to do, but maybe this is what you can imprint in your mind. This is what I'm going to, if that happened. I'm going to be like, well, let's at least bask in it for a little while longer before I go back. Hold on.
That'd be good. And that's right. that could happen. And I absolutely understand from near-death experiences the profound meaning and importance of our earthly life, even if it's difficult, even if there are struggles, which we all have in our earthly life, every single person on the planet. And yet it's so important. We're here for a meaning and a purpose, and there's a greater picture. And so if I were to have a life-threatening event and had like 10 or 12% of near-death experiencers encounter, you need to go back, there's more for you to do, your work's not done, I would embrace that, because I know that's coming from the loving other side, that they have my best interest in mind, best interest of the world, and perhaps somewhat reluctantly I would come back and return to my earthly life for who knows how long, and who knows, maybe talk to some shows again in the future. So that would be that'd be what I would do. That's a good imprint. So that would be what I guess is imprinted here. Great.
There you go. You're going to think about that more and more now. I know you are. It's Dr. Jeffrey Long that we're talking to, the leading near-death experience researcher and New York Times bestselling author. His books, God in the Afterlife, the groundbreaking new evidence for God and near-death experience. Also, Evidence of the Afterlife, the science of near-death experiences. His links, spiritualityandhealth.org, adcrf.org, NDERF.org, OBERF.org. If that sounds like that's crazy, Connie, just go to our website and you can see all that there. You're listening to Coast AM. It is Coast to Coast AM. Connie Willis here. How you doing tonight? Hope you're having a great night. Hope you're enjoying the show. We have open lines coming up for you shortly. But before then, we're still sticking around with Dr. Jeffrey Long, learning about the afterlife. And now we want to get into the newer stuff. I actually wanted to get into your newer stuff earlier, right, Jeff? But I had so many other questions I had to ask you that were just let's do an amazing Kreskin moment that was just burning in my mind to ask you for a while. What is the new, all this research that you've done, and you're constantly into it? What have you learned now that you can tell us that is new and different? And I have to ask this too. How does AI jump into this realm as well?
Oh, that is a great question, Connie. AI, or artificial intelligence, is starting to impact our lives in a whole variety of ways, and certainly in the future will be impacting more and more. And AI, artificial intelligence, is certainly already a significant tool in my near-death experience research. What we get when we do our survey on the website is a huge amount of narrative responses to a particular question. Well, what do you do with that? Scientifically, you need to go through every single response, categorize them, and get the major themes. What are the major, if you will, most common things that people are saying in their near-death experience, say to a question about, has your life changed after your near-death experience in any way? So I started using artificial intelligence to analyze large amounts of text, and to my amazement, I've gotten some really positive, good findings. It seems to be right up there with what you could do if you do the very careful scientific method of reading every narrative response to these survey questions and writing it all out and finding themes. So with this, I'm able to, with artificial intelligence, getting another different perspective on that very important question, what happens after your near-death experience? What happens for after effects? And what I'm finding is that there's far more varied changes in people's lives than I think prior researchers ever knew. I mean, in prior research, they just asked questions about specific changes that they might have had. For example, less materialistic, less fear of death, increased belief of an afterlife, obviously. And yet, there seems to be so much more. It seems to impact their life in a lot of other ways. And artificial intelligence is helping me to be at the leading edge of that type of research.
You know, there's so many, like you talk to the people that have come back, but there's so many other people that are like, I love it here, I'm staying. And we have to deal with the grief on this side and like, oh no, because most people don't have that knowledge of it's wonderful over there and there's something happening. There's so many people that think it just stops. They think it just stops, which is absolutely crazy to me. I mean, stop and think about yourself right now. If you can go deep enough within yourself, you can feel that you are. It's so hard to explain, isn't it? That you are right now. You are. You are. How can that ever end? How do you put that in words? You would be better at it with me than me.
Yeah, I mean, we have that, our whole identity, that awareness of who we are. It seems to be all that we are. It's what we know in our earthly life. And it's so sad that people think that's it. And when they come to the end of their physical life, that's it, that they don't really have something beyond. And that's the glorious news about near-death experience, is that we're far more than our physical earthly life, that we have that eternal existence that preceded our earthly life here. It's our, if you will, our heritage, and yet it's also our destiny. It's where we will ultimately return our real home after we die here. I mean, you know, for people that think life ends at the end of our earthly life, I mean, good gosh, just listen to this show again. Over and over, we're talking about the evidence that for the reality of an afterlife. Certainly, you know, there's a lot of good books, a lot of good media presentations about near-death experiences, but near-death experiences are, in my opinion, the strongest line of evidence that we have for the reality of an afterlife. And again, by the time you've studied thousands and thousands of near-death experiences, I have and other researchers are, you're back to that basic scientific principle, that being what's real is consistently observed. And the consistent message of an afterlife is so deep in near-death experiences, I have to consider that an established fact.
Is there something in the teachings, in the school, in the universities that people go to and the schools that people go to, like, to learn to be a doctor, do they say things in a way of, well, this is the end, and when it ends, the brain, what happens is do they explain away the afterlife? I know I've heard it in documentaries. I know I've heard it in shows on 60 Minutes or, I don't know if it was exactly 60 Minutes, but these shows where the doctors will say, oh, it's only their brain reacting and pulling up memories and pulling up things that, it's just the brain doing stuff. They just don't want to admit that there's something else. What is it that teaches them to think that it's over? Who are these people that just want to stop it?
These are the people that haven't listened to shows like this, that are not aware of the huge amount of evidence for the reality of near-death experience and its consistent message of an afterlife. And it's very sad. Here's my message to the skeptics that think that all we are is our physical brain function, and when it shuts down at the end of life, it's over. For skeptics, they've proposed over, believe it or not, Connie, 30 different so-called skeptical explanations of near-death experience. I've heard them all. You name it, physiological explanations, cultural, psychological explanations. Well, now the reason there's over 30 of these skeptical explanations floating around is that there's no one or several of these so-called psychological, physiological explanations of near-death experience, if you will, brain function explanations of near-death experience. None of them make sense, even to the group of skeptics collectively. I mean, think about that. If they really had some explanation of near-death experience based on brain function, you wouldn't have over 30 of these different alternative and often contradictory skeptical explanations floating around. I mean, the bottom line is physical brain function doesn't explain any of these aspects of near-death experience that we've been talking about tonight, let alone the totality of them. And it's really sad that the scientific community has not embraced it more when you have such a mountain of evidence. In fact, the reality of evidence for near-death experience is actually much greater than the evidence that drives my medical clinical decisions in managing cancer patients. I mean, the evidence is that solid, Connie.
Wow, you have so much going on. Gosh, it'd be so fun to be a part of what you do, to just get right, like I said, the front line. You are right there. So the soul, whatever you want to call it, the soul, the consciousness, I know a lot of people have different names for what that magic is. Whatever that magic is, I call it the soul.
Yep,
that breath. Yeah. It's the soul. When the soul is in you, it allows not only consciousness, it allows you to think, you to live, to see, to enjoy, to feel. And without it, once it goes away, I mean, that's what keeps your body moving and having fun and swimming and just moving. That magic moves your body. Your body is that vehicle, that individual vehicle that once you pass on, this is me, once you pass on, you join I don't know if you just join and connect with everything else or not. What do you see? But once it's gone, your body just stops. It doesn't move anymore. It's no longer alive. It just dies. It stiffens up. That magic of the soul is amazing. That's the miracle.
It really is. I mean, it's like we share a brain, Connie. That's exactly what I think. So, absolutely, the soul is that, as you said, that immaterial part of who we really are. It's that connection with eternity that we all have. It's that real essence. It's that real driving force of who and what we all are. It's that part of us that can't die, that will live on eternally in an afterlife. So, it's such a critical part of what makes us all humans that you'd think there'd be far more people interested in this and far less skeptics poo-pooing all this because it's so important. It's such a critical part. We talked earlier about even a Pew survey back in 2021 found 72% of Americans believed that near-death experiences were the real soul departing the body. So it's fascinating that the word has gotten out to the public such that the significant majority of people do accept the reality of a soul and that the soul can depart at the time of a near-death experience. So I guess it's almost like, Connie, science has to catch up what is so widely known in discussions on shows like this and the general knowledge of the American public.
Well, what has made these skeptics?
I think part of it is they're sort of like, I guess I can sort of identify that with the skeptics as a physician. I mean, every day I have to make decisions that are life and death in treating patients' cancer, and so you really want to look at what the best evidence is. And I think the problem with skeptics is they don't understand the evidence for the reality of the afterlife, from near-death experiences, of soul, of that very part thing. And they just haven't spent the time to really study the mountain of evidence that shows the reality of all that, to think about it, to understand how that affects themselves. It's very sad. I mean, it's almost like they spend their whole life reading their literature that's focused just on their particular small slice of intellectual knowledge that drives their medical practice, their PhD research practice. So they just don't seem to have like tunnel vision, if you will, and not really able to think about, conceive of, or be aware of that big picture, that important big picture, the concept of a soul and the reality that we're so much more than our physical brain.
I've seen it with going to the alien world and the alien abductees. I've seen it in those of us that have seen the Bigfoot too, where they just want to deny it. It's, it takes a lot of courage to say, hey, this is what I saw on the other side. It takes a lot of courage to say, I saw this Bigfoot. It takes a lot of courage to say, I saw this alien or a praying mantis. You hear stories constantly, and I'm talking a praying mantis that stands up 18 foot tall. Well, maybe not 18. I don't know, but 12 foot tall or 15 foot tall or 10 foot tall. When people see these things and they have the guts enough to say it, and it has affected them so much, and then they're just denied, they're just pushed down. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. These people, where do they come up with being able to say no? What happened to people trusting other people, listening to other people, or at least open enough to go, okay, let me put it in, let me just store it and see what happens in the future. Maybe I might have that same thing happen. Where did all that go? Where did the mistrust happen? It drives me crazy.
And it got me too, Connie. Geez. I mean, here you are with phenomenon that very credible people talk about. In a lot of these things, talking about like aliens and alien abductions. I mean, this is something that is difficult for people to talk about. They get a lot of pushback from people. I mean, they have to really believe that. They really have to have experienced it before they're going to go out on a limb and share that. And I think one real validating thing that you can see from people that have these paranormal experience is look at how it changed their life. Nobody changes their life based on an event in their life that they don't believe in, that they strongly doubt, that they think, could be explainable by physical brain function. So people that have these paranormal phenomena, exactly like what you just described there, when they have their big changes in their life, that is a huge indicator that their experience was not only real, it really happened, but also the person experiencing it believed it and changed their life, their beliefs, their values in response to what they experienced. You can't fake the after effects, if you will, of a paranormal experience. When people see those changes in people's lives, that's, if you will, a significant line of proof that what they're describing really happened, and moreover, they're changing their values, beliefs, understanding in response to what they experienced.
And it truly changes them. It truly changes them. Do you notice that people that have come back and they're just ecstatic? Do you notice that they want to tell the world it, or do they say, I don't even care to tell the world because they're not going to listen to me anyway. I'm going to take this and just be closer to my family, to my friends, and just live it as much to the fullest as possible. What do you see? Kind of all kinds of that in different
Absolutely.
stories.
And that's a really good point. I think for all the listeners that have had that profound, significant spiritual, paranormal event in your life, try to find people that are open-minded, that will listen, that will believe you. I mean, people have believed everything else you've said in your life. I mean, good gosh, this is just one more thing. And it's a profound paranormal spiritual thing. And what they're sharing is important. I mean, as you said, they're often people that have these experiences joyous to share it with other people. They're profoundly positive messages. It sort of expands our consciousness. I mean, wow, there's things in the world we hadn't even thought of, aliens, life on other planets, things on this earth that we still don't fully understand. And these are the foundation phenomena, initial observations that are so important to help us to understand, if you will, the bigger picture of life on this earth and the bigger picture of life throughout the universe, even on other planets.
I've always talked about paranormal things and aliens and this and that. And my dad, before he passed, would just be like, he didn't believe any. My mom was good with it, but my dad was like, But I know that once he passed, I felt it. He was on board with me, and I could tell. I knew as soon as he passed, he went, wow, you're right on target. Don't stop. Stay where you are.
That's excellent. What a great validation of everything you believe. And I mean, look at aliens, life on other planets. I'm sheepishly will admit, Connie, I used to not believe that, but there's such a mountain of evidence that I've encountered. As a man of science, I follow evidence and reasoning, and the evidence is overwhelming for life on other planets. In fact, we've had several near-death experiencers describe as part of their experience very vivid descriptions of life on other planets. I mean, I still almost get goosebumps when I recall one near-death experiencer who visited a planet that was totally water. There wasn't land on this planet, and the description of the intelligent, literally loving life that she encountered in this water world is absolutely gripping.
Yeah,
so,
water world.
The evidence for the reality of life, I mean, there's just such a bigger picture of this universe. All you have to do is listen to people that have encountered it.
Yes.
And learn.
Yeah, exactly right. So we have open lines coming up. Do you mind staying up another hour? I know you're on the East Coast. Do you mind staying up another hour and talking with people with open lines?
I would love to do that. This is such a fantastic show. I would love to hear the questions and comments from the listeners. That would be great.
And real quick, where do people find you?
Website would be nderf.org.
All right. It's Dr. Jeffrey Long going to stick with us